Hey guys, Josh from the Ancient History Guy here. Hello and welcome to all. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Today we are going to once again be diving into one of Graham Hancock's theories because A, it's fun, and B, I just want to. Today we are going to be looking at the famous Vulture Stone located within the complex of Göbekli Tepe. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, what is the Vulture Stone? Well, simply put, it's a giant slab of standing limestone with vultures and scorpions carved into it. However, the reason why so many of us are curious about it is because of its location, within the ancient site of Göbekli Tepe. Now, the Vulture Stone is actually one of the many standing stones around the temple. It just so happens to be the most highly decorated. And so, it draws the most attention as a result. I'll chuck a photo of it on the screen now, but it's pretty impressive carving to say the least. Now, in his show, Ancient Apocalypse, Graham Hancock claims that these symbols, these shapes, and these essentially halos of animals are actually constellations, because obviously the scorpion shape is a reference to our own very modern constellation Scorpio, and all the other stars convenient of our current night sky. He then goes on to claim that these depictions are a warning to us about a comet that struck the Earth and caused mass devastation, and the constellations being portrayed are a sort of mark in the calendar, so as to A, tell the visitor that this event happened on such and such date, and B, tell future humans that this could happen again. Sufficient to say there are multiple problems with this theory. For one, it is very much leaning on our Western version of constellations. The Western constellations are, after all, directly adapted from Greek myths and constellations, which they themselves are a corruption of ancient Sumerian Babylonian myths. However, all around the world, people drew different shapes in the sky. I mean, I as a kid thought the belt of Orion was the head of a horse. In China, Scorpio, the very constellation that is quote-unquote obviously portrayed at Göbekli Tepe, is completely different and actually makes up part of a larger constellation, or more room thing. Truth be told, Chinese constellations are weird. Evidence for this can be found in Indonesia. The constellation there is known as, and I'm saying the translated version here, because Lord Almighty, that is a very long name, the brooded swan or leaning coconut tree, because of the shape's similarity to those sort of leaning, curving objects. If we consider the vast distance of time between then and now, I think it's almost impossible not to come to the conclusion that they are not drawing our recognised constellations. In fact, it seems almost a bit ignorant to assume such. Carrying on from my statement of a vast amount of time, as Hancock rightfully points out, the sky would have been different than it is today. A, because light pollution, but also because of the way the Earth orbits and the Sun itself orbits around the Milky Way. So in case you haven't noticed, I am leaning heavily towards these depictions not being constellations. This is backed up by the actual archaeologists on the ground digging at Göbekli Tepe, who say this about the theory, quote, "The assumption that asterisms, familiar star patterns, are stable across time and cultures is not convincing. It is highly unlikely that early Neolithic hunters in the Upper Mesopotamia recognized the exact same celestial constellations as described by ancient Egyptians, Arabians, and Greek scholars, which still populate our imagination today. So, not even the people that are uncovering these ancient pieces of art think that they are constellations for the exact reasons I have just listed." So from this, we can pretty much come to the conclusion, in fact, nay, we can almost guarantee that these are not constellations. They are depictions of something, but of what? That's the bigger question here. Well, if we look at the archaeologists who are actually digging at the site, we find that they eventually found human remains, which naturally linked the site to a place to perform rituals to pass the individual onto the afterlife. Quote, "The bones show that corpses were brought into the ritual areas, decorated by the engraved T-stone, were then laid out and left to be stripped of their soft tissue by wild animals. This actually isn't too dissimilar to the oldest religion in the world, Zoroastrianism, which has the body of the deceased placed on a tall tower to be naturally decomposed by the earth and scavengers. This probably explains why vultures and scorpions are so prominent. Vultures are, well, scavengers. They find corpses, they descend on them, and then they peck at it until there is nothing left but bone. The theory goes that this carving is simply portraying what happens when you perform the rites at the temple, which was clearly an important aspect of the culture that built Göbekli Tepe. So what about the comet theory? Well, I'll leave this to Andrew Collins to explain as to why this theory is so widely accepted without any evidence that the Vulture Stone is portraying a comet. Quote, "It is infinitely more tempting to conclude that the Vulture Stone really is a warning of impending doom from future comet impacts conveyed across time by the Göbekli builders. This is unfortunate, as despite all evidence to the contrary, such sensationalist views will continue to influence the opinions of researchers well into the future." So, from all over the academic and actual real-world evidence of constellations in the real world, we can come to the conclusion that Hancock's idea that the halos of animals carved into the Vulture Stone, specifically the over-reliance of the scorpion to represent Scorpio, is a load of utter rubbish. They are definitely not constellations, and if they were, the chances of the scorpion being our fairly recent depiction of Scorpio is just so far-fetched that it's almost laughable. Anyways, those are just my thoughts. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching and listening to our videos. Be sure to like, comment and subscribe if you've enjoyed. All sources are listed and linked in the description below. I've been the Ancient History Guy, and as always, I'll be seeing you later.